There are 4 parts to this test. 1, 2, 3 and 4. Part 1. Sick Building Syndrome. You will hear a talk about sick building syndrome, which is ill health that is believed to be caused by buildings. For questions 1 to 10, complete the sentences.
Have you ever gone back to work after a break or a holiday and been suddenly hit by a complete lack of energy? And you wonder whether it's simply because you're not relaxing anymore, but you think that perhaps it's something else, something to do with your environment. Well, you could be right. In 1982, the World Health Organization defined sick building syndrome as a syndrome of complaints covering non-specific feelings of ill health, the onset of which is associated with the occupancy of certain modern buildings. To those suffering from it, it means feelings of lack of energy, headaches, dry skin, even itchy eyes. And while the general view might be that there's a chance of getting sick if you work in a factory, and that you wouldn't expect to feel unwell when you go to work in offices, this is not true. The office, it seems, is not the safe and healthy environment it is traditionally thought to be. Surveys among office workers have revealed that large numbers of them in the same building can be affected by the symptoms. Some are affected only from time to time, and others all week. But a common finding was that sufferers were mainly affected at the beginning of the week, and when they'd been out of the building for some time. And the symptoms disappeared quite quickly when they left work. However, the problem is often a hidden one, because many people don't associate the problems with their environment. They think it's probably something about them themselves. And they often say nothing about it, because if they do so, they might be accused of being complainers. It has been suggested that the problems could arise for reasons as simple as that the central heating is too high. But it is a mistake to look for simple explanations of what is a complex matter. It could be just that the heating is up too high, but this does not explain the range of symptoms that sufferers in the same building can have, or the fact that these occur in buildings with similar characteristics. It is not possible to generalize about which features of a building cause the problems. A lack of windows that open and of natural light may well play a part, but there is no proof that these are the main causes. However, there are certain types of building that are more prone to sick building syndrome than others. Air-conditioned buildings are more likely to produce the symptoms than naturally ventilated ones. And buildings that have large amounts of new materials, for example plastics and new carpets, are more likely to produce them too. Experts now think that the most important aspect is the indoor air quality. What kind of air you are breathing. What kind of air is in contact with your skin. There's a range of pollutants in buildings, from dust to carbon dioxide, to the very many organic compounds which can become gases and be released from office materials and furnishings. These, therefore, are the 2 aspects that experts are looking at in an attempt to address the problem. There is no reason why air conditioning systems shouldn't be operated in a safe and healthy way. But the fact is that they are often not sufficiently well maintained, and sometimes that's because they haven't been designed with this in mind. And with regard to the building and furnishing materials that are used to put a building together, there are now a range of materials on the market which produce less pollution. There's one other aspect too. In older buildings, research has shown that one of the big problems is office cleaning. Experiments have been done where offices have been cleaned, and the symptoms of sufferers have been reduced almost overnight by up to 40%. So, although the problem is not going to go away quickly, there are now the means to address the problem and more knowledge of it than there was when the World Health Organization first started looking into it.
That is the end of Part 1. Part 2. Local sports centres. You will hear part of a local radio programme in which details about sports facilities in the area are given. For questions 11 to 18, fill in the missing information.
Next, we come to sports facilities, and as you may know, we have 3 excellent sports centres in our area. So, if you feel like taking up a sport, improving your abilities at one, or joining in with others to play, there's no shortage of opportunities for you. Between them, our 3 centres cover just about every sport you could mention. First of all, the Springfield Centre. Opened only a year ago, it has a swimming pool complex, conference facilities, an athletics track, and an outdoor area with football and hockey pitches. The swimming pool complex caters for casual swimming and diving, and there are also lessons and competitions. Swimming lessons and coaching are available on Saturday and Sunday evenings, with diving courses on the latter. The athletics track attracts top athletes, clubs and schools. Coaching for this, both running and field events, is on Thursday evenings, when there are also football coaching sessions. And if you want to improve your hockey, Wednesday evenings are for you. By the way, non-sporting events, such as holiday activities and firework displays, are also held at the centre. Numerous sports are on offer at the Postbridge Centre too. There are 10 indoor tennis courts there, and the Saturday coaching sessions have proved so popular that they've been extended from mornings only and are now available all day. Aspiring footballers can enrol for coaching sessions there too. They're on Fridays and Saturdays, all day, and if you fancy joining a volleyball or a basketball team, you can do that too. Coaching for the former is on Wednesday evenings, and for the latter on Thursday evenings and Sunday afternoons. Finally, there's the Avenue Centre, which again caters for a wide variety of sports. You can improve your backhand there too. There are tennis lessons every weekday at lunchtimes, and badminton and table tennis tuition, in both cases, on Friday evenings. If weightlifting is your thing, then this is the place for you, with coaching offered on Saturday mornings. And there's gymnastics too, with highly qualified instructors taking training sessions on Tuesday evenings. So, there's no excuse for being lazy in this area. If you want more details on any of the things I've mentioned, get in touch with the centres themselves. They'll be pleased to hear from you.
That is the end of Part 2. Part 3. Behaviour in Crowds. You will hear part of a radio programme in which a psychologist talks about the way in which people behave in crowds and groups. For questions 19 to 29, indicate which views he expresses by writing yes or no in the box provided.
I'm joined on the line now by social psychologist David McIntosh. David, is it natural for our behaviour to change when we're in a crowd environment?
Well, yes, it's natural in the sense that people typically do that. I mean, one very simple example is that you very rarely laugh by yourself, but when you're in a crowd of people, say at some funny film, play or whatever, it's very common to find yourself laughing out loud.
So what sorts of behaviour do you find in a crowd environment then?
Well, a number of things. I mean, what generally one can say is that people have needs to be with people for various reasons. Family, friends, activities. And they also get things out of simply being in a larger crowd. Sometimes it's just a sense of being somewhat more anonymous. They sometimes also get an amplification of feelings. I mean, for example, at concerts and football crowds, feelings seem to get heightened. And sometimes there's something really nice about getting a strong sense of being part of a large group.
Why should we become disruptive in some sorts of crowd environments then? Why should there sometimes be that element of aggression? A
couple of possibilities. One is the thing that crowds very often seem to amplify feelings, and so they can amplify bad as well as good feelings. The other is, what's often been suggested is that we have a number of kinds of identities. I mean, one, which is the predominant one, is our everyday one. But there are others, and what happens in crowds is that we can sometimes shift, if you like, our identity, and what a crowd picks up on are other aspects of ourselves, which might sometimes be the less pleasant ones, the more destructive ones.
Now, if we focus on the animal kingdom, does the same thing happen there?
You get something like that. What you get with some animals, of course, is that you get examples of very coordinated groups like small fish schooling so that they look like a large fish to possible predators, and you get, lions hunting in packs, and you get large groups of animals like ants and bees and so on who act in a very highly structured way, which is much less typical of humans, except in odd circumstances like armies. But they sometimes also have disruptive tendencies. You get packs of animals scattering in panic too.
So this feeling of amplification when we're in a crowd can lead us to act in an uncharacteristic way then, from what you're saying?
Uncharacteristic in the sense that it's what we don't normally do, but it's not, as it were, not ours. The behaviour is there, only it's usually kept under control.
Now, the group situation, rather than the crowd, that's very different again, isn't it?
It is, rather. I mean, in a group, you're focused in, you're looking inwards, you're not worried about people outside. What's very clear is there's a very strong sense of being a member of a group, of a very defined little set. It's us versus them.
And it gives you a sense of security, presumably.
It does. It's familiar, it's comfortable, and it also reinforces, if you like, your sense of yourself, because you're very aware of yourself as a member of that group, as being a person among friends. And that also helps you relax in various ways. You're comfortable about your behaviour. You're defined as a friend among friends, and therefore you don't have to worry about how you appear so much.
Does your behaviour still change slightly? You've talked about a crowd's effect on an individual. Surely still a small group will change you in some way sometimes.
Oh, that's true. As I've said, we have a number of identities, and our identity varies depending on the kind of group we're in. In a particular group, we have a particular kind of identity with certain behaviour, so that when you're with a group of friends, you relax, laugh, play the fool. But there are other groups you're members of where you behave differently. Groups of workmates, for example, more formal groups. And so, in a sense, you have different roles depending on what group you happen to be in at a given time. I think most of us are aware that this happens, that we are different kinds of people in different kinds of situations.
David McIntosh, thanks very much for talking to us.
That is the end of Part 3. Part 4. Different events. You will hear extracts of 5 different people talking about events. You will hear the series twice. Task 1. Letters A to H list different events. As you listen, put them in the order in which you hear them described by completing the boxes numbered 30 to 34 with the appropriate letter. Task 2. Letters A to H list what the people in the 5 extracts are doing when they are speaking. As you listen, put them in the order in which you hear them by completing the boxes numbered 35 to 39 with the appropriate letter.
You ought to go to one sometime. You'd probably enjoy it. I mean, even if you don't know what's going on out there on the pitch, you'll be impressed by the atmosphere. The noise of the crowd, the singing, the chanting and all that. I know there's a lot of talk about how much trouble goes on at some of them, but you don't find that sort of thing round here. It's all just people cheering on their side. Some of them get really worked up, but it's always well behaved. I'd certainly give it a try if I were you.
Quite frankly, the whole thing was appalling. It cost a fortune to get in, and from where I was you could hardly see anything. In the interval I had to queue for ages to get an overpriced drink, and I missed some of the rest of it because of that. Not that it made much difference, because I couldn't really follow the plot anyway. I couldn't tell who was who or what was going on. No wonder audiences are falling these days. If that's the kind of thing they put on, and if that's the way you get treated, there must be lots of people who get fed up and don't bother going again.
What's the point in turning up for something like that? I'll tell you what the point is. You ought to stand up and be counted. I mean, if everyone thought like you, nothing would ever get done. And even if we don't win, we should all state our case. It's the least we can do. Everyone in this community is threatened by what they're planning, and that includes you. So don't be so apathetic. I mean, if you just sit back and take it now, because you can't be bothered to go and join in the march this afternoon, you can hardly complain afterwards when it's too late.
Since you ask, I'll tell you. The last one was a complete and utter waste of time. I mean, you were there. You saw it. It was total chaos, with everybody yelling and shouting, no sort of organisation at all, and just a lot of people being totally unreasonable. And what was the outcome? Not a single thing got sorted out or decision made. So you can hardly be surprised that I've had enough. I mean, that really is it, as far as I'm concerned. You can all get on with it without me from now on. It's no good trying to talk me into it. I've resigned, and I won't be turning up again.
I suppose you've got a point, actually. It was a bit crowded there, which did make it a bit uncomfortable. I guess they asked too many people for the size of the place. But in all honesty, it didn't particularly bother me. And now you mention it, they hadn't really laid on enough for such a big crowd to eat. It did run out fairly early, but I'd had enough by then. Oh, and you're right about some of those people they'd invited acting very strangely. I wonder who they were. But they certainly stopped the thing from becoming a bore. I'm with you about the horrid music as well, but I have to say I've certainly been to worse.
That is the end of Part 4.